Part 2, the xylophone. The xylophone and the marimba are the most similar of the members of this family. The xylophone is also made of wood. However, the xylophone is pitched higher than a marimba. So it's really the soprano version, the piccolo version of the marimba. Somewhat, not completely. So the xylophone, the highest note of the marimba was a C, 5 ledger lines above the staff. The xylophone adds another octave. It goes up to the C, 8 ledger lines above the treble staff, the same as the high note of the piano, same as the high note of the glockenspiel. But it's, all of those instruments have the same high C, same as the top note on the piano. The xylophone is very often made of synthetic. This particular instrument is a synthetic bar instrument. I should mention, a lot of percussionists refer to the synthetic bar by a brand name. It's kind of like Coke. People refer to Coke, whether they're drinking Pepsi or RC or whatever, they call it a Coke. Plastic marimba bars are referred to by the name Kelon, K-E-L-O-N, which is actually the brand that one of the mallet companies uses. But most percussionists call it Kelon because it's a simple term to use, and it was the most common form of synthetic bar. The other difference, however, between the marimba and the xylophone is that the marimba is a darker, warmer instrument designed as a solo instrument and not necessarily to project in the orchestra. The xylophone is designed to be an orchestral instrument and is tuned to project. I should have demonstrated, I'll do this in a little bit, to tune the keyboard percussion instruments. I have a bar over here, hold on a second. This is an old marimba bar that was cracked, and as you see on the bottom, it's carved and it's thinner here. And the way that you tune this bar is by scraping. You can see that the wood has been scraped from the inside to tune the bar. Hopefully you only have to tune the instrument once or twice in its lifetime, and these instruments last a good long time, because you don't want to be continually taking wood off of this bar. Eventually you're going to end up with no bar, or such a thin bar that it will crack. So the good thing is they don't significantly go out of tune. They will be slightly affected by temperature and humidity. When it's hot and humid, the marimba bars are a little flatter, not just slightly, not enough to send them out and get tuned every year, but they're slightly low, and when it's cold and dry, they're slightly higher. Something we live with as keyboard players. As I said, they don't have to be tuned very often. I have an antique marimba that was, the patent on it is 1906. And it was obviously tuned at least once before I bought it in the mid-70s. And I tuned it when I bought it and haven't had to tune it since. So the tuning does last for a very long time. But that's how the bars are tuned. Now, in addition to tuning the fundamental, we can also tune the overtones. And the xylophone is tuned to what's called quintal tuning. So it brings out the overtone of the fifth. It makes it a sharper, brighter tone quality designed to project. So the same note on the xylophone and the marimba have the same pitch, but as you can hear, a very different tone quality. So that's the other difference between these two instruments. As I mentioned on the marimba, the higher you go on the instrument, the harder the mallet you use. So the mallet that was the hard mallet on the top of the marimba, as you go further up the xylophone, starts to sound soft in the high register. So we use even harder mallets on the xylophone than we do on the marimba. In general, we use unwrapped mallets without the yarn wrap, either a soft rubber or a hard plastic, I'm sorry, either a hard rubber, I meant to say, back that up, either a hard rubber or a soft plastic. As you hear the soft plastic, it's a very bright, brilliant tone and goes all the way up to the top of the instrument with a full tone and articulation. So in general, the xylophone mallets would be a hard rubber or a soft plastic. We get into hard plastic when we get to the glockenspiel, and it's not necessarily interchangeable because the hard plastic could crack a wooden xylophone bar, especially in the mid to low range. So we use a soft plastic. As you see on the page, the range is much more standardized. The primary range of the xylophone is 3.5 octaves. Again, this now starts on F and goes up to the C. So it's 3.5 octaves. However, because the instrument is so high, if top C is 8 ledger lines, 5 ledger lines, 2 ledger lines, the lowest C on the instrument is still third space. The F is the bottom of the treble clef. The treble clef ends on this F, and 3/4 of the instrument is above the treble staff. So the xylophone is written as a transposing instrument. It sounds an octave higher than written. So this note is written middle C. The lowest note is written 3 ledger lines below the staff, but sounds an octave higher than that. And then the top note of the xylophone and the top note of the marimba are the same written pitch, but the xylophone sounds an octave higher. So that's important to know, is the transposition of the xylophone. There are extended range instruments. There's usually referred to as a xylo-rimba. The most common one, as you see on the page, is a 4-octave instrument, adding another half octave at the bottom to the C below middle C, written or sounding middle C. It's not an extremely common instrument. You probably will very rarely encounter a part in band or orchestra that's written for a 4-octave xylophone. It was very popular in Europe in the mid-20th century. If you're familiar with composers like Boulez, Messiaen, George Antheil, they all wrote for xylo-rimba, 4-octave xylophone. But that's the only place I generally see it, is that era, those composers. Almost all of your concert band and orchestra music will use this standard range xylophone. What else? We talked about the range, we talked about the transposition, we talked about the mallets. There's not much more to talk about on the xylophone. Again, it's really crucial to stay low to the instrument and to play right on the edge of the sharps and flats. And this is very strange. One of my former students recorded herself overdubbing, and because I'm recording this on the phone, the high range looks like it's to my left, and the low range looks like it's to my right. But that's simply the camera reversing the screenshot. All of these instruments are set up just like a piano, with a low note to the left, the high note to the right, even though it looks very funny from your angle. I think that's all you need to know about the xylophone. I'm going to reset and come back with part 3 on the vibraphone.